Hey, welcome back to Try This from The Washington Post. This is the second of 4 classes in our course about how to reclaim our time and attention in an increasingly distracting world. In our first class, we spoke with psychiatrist Anna Lembke about the things that activate the feel-good neurotransmitter dopamine. The problem is that many of us have become a little too dependent on the instant dopamine hits we get from our devices. Just ask rats.
If you give a rat unlimited access to press a lever in a cage for amphetamine, they will press that lever till exhaustion or death.
Okay, so you can't ask them, but you get the point. Too much of a good thing is not good for you. So in this second class, let's learn how to resist the allure of the lever. We'll hear more from Anna and share steps you can take to break some of your own habits that you might not be crazy about and reset your brain's reward pathways. So in terms of resetting and recalibrating our baseline and bringing our dopamine level to homeostasis, tell us how we can start doing that.
Well, I think it's good to do an experiment. And I like to use the language of experimentation, which is to say, even if you are not convinced that this substance or behavior is a problem in your life, do an experiment. And the experiment is to eliminate it for 30 days. Why 30 days? Because on average, that is the amount of time it takes for people to come out of acute withdrawal, which is the first 10 to 14 days, and begin to feel better.
And if you do this, researchers like Anna say that your dopamine levels can actually improve and return to homeostasis. But the caveat to getting there is that it can be a process.
I always warn people that they will feel worse before they feel better when they first stop an addictive substance or behavior. The universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, depression, and craving. But those feelings are time limited and actually probably caused by the drug itself because we are in withdrawal.
Anna knows firsthand how tough the withdrawal period can be because she wound up with a pretty unconventional addiction. She may be an expert in addiction psychiatry, but experts are not immune to this.
So I got addicted to romance novels. The Twilight Saga was my gateway drug. For whatever reason, I had never really read romance novels. And then in my early 40s, somebody recommended it and I was completely transported. It was just the right thing at the right time or the wrong thing, depending on how you look at it. But I was essentially off and running in the whole genre. I've always been a reader, but I became really kind of an obsessive reader. Then I got a Kindle and then I could hide what I was reading. And the most interesting thing about it was that even though I'm an addiction psychiatrist, I didn't really see it happening as it was happening. Mm-hmm. And there was this insidious increase in feelings of depression, anxiety, insomnia that I didn't attribute to my reading habit until I gave it up.
Interesting. What did you think it was?
Oh, who knows?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thought it was like stress or whatever.
Yeah, right. My husband's not doing what he needs to do.
Sure.
Yeah. That person was 10 minutes late for the meeting. Right? I don't know.
Right. It's someone else's fault.
It's someone else's fault, always.
Those feelings of depression and anxiety aren't unlike the withdrawal symptoms Anna described earlier. But if you haven't yet quit the addictive behavior and you start to notice irritability bubbling up, it could be a wake-up call that it's time to take a break.
And then I realized through an interaction, a discussion with somebody, a student actually, that it was a problem. I'd started taking romance novels to work, reading in the 10 minutes between patients, reading at like family gatherings instead of socializing. It really became obsessive.
And so she gave it up completely. She got rid of her Kindle and went on an abstinence trial, meaning she completely stopped reading romance novels for an extended period of time. You can also call it a dopamine fast.
And what was so shocking to me was how hard it was, especially in the evenings, which was the usual time when I would read. I was very anxious, very restless, could not fall asleep. I completely lost the ability to put myself to sleep without this behavior. But after about 2 weeks, it got much better. And then by 4 weeks, I was like, I'm good to go.
Anna may have been able to eventually part with her romance novels for a month, But giving up your phone for 4 whole weeks, that's a different story. Don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to stop using your phone for quite that long. Come on, we're realists here at Try This. But I am going to ask you to first think about how you want to spend your time and how your phone may be taking you away from doing those things.
Our time is our most valuable commodity. And, I think when people look back at their lives and the sheer amount of time that we have spent online, mindlessly consuming digital media, I think there's going to be a lot of regret. We don't want that. We want to live fulfilling lives. We want to be deeply connected to other humans. We want to make the world a little bit better than we found it.
All right, now you are sold on trying an abstinence trial, because who can disagree with making the world better than we found it? But before you start, Anna says you should put some barriers in place with a technique called self-binding. More on that after the break. So self-binding, do you want to explain what that is? Because I don't think a lot of people know what self-binding is.
So self-binding means that we need to put both literal and metacognitive barriers between ourselves and our drug of choice before we feel the desire to consume. And those barriers allow us to press the pause button between desire and consumption. If we rely on willpower alone in this world of overwhelming overabundance, we will not be successful. And we will experience so much frustration at our inability to curb our consumption that we'll give up the project altogether. So it's very important to anticipate the moment of desire and then, again, put these barriers in place so that when the time comes, we essentially have constricted our choice.
Right.
We can use time as a form of self-binding, like I'm not going to touch my phone till after I get up, make my bed, exercise, eat breakfast, brush my teeth, and then and only then am I going to go on my phone.
If you are going to abstain from your phone and its dopamine activating apps, Anna suggests you have some alternative plans ready to go.
We can decide not to do this behavior, but it can't just be about not doing a behavior. What is the behavior that we will do instead? What are the kind of activities that are good and good for us, healthy for us, and make us feel not just better in the short term, but also better in the long term. And so, things like, reaching out to a friend, going on a walk, doing something that's intellectually challenging. One of the things that we have to be careful of here is a phenomenon called cross-addiction, where if we replace the one behavior with something that's equally addictive, then we're very likely to just get addicted to the other thing. So we have to be very mindful and sort of diligent about monitoring that and making sure we're not just like swapping out, scrolling on our phones for, smoking pot or something like that.
Right. Some other distraction.
Right.
Because then the larger question there is like, well, what are you trying to distract yourself from?
Right. And that is important. But I want to emphasize that I think we can sometimes put too much weight on trying to figure out why we're doing these addictive behaviors, looking for some deep-seated reason, when in fact, the reason that we use addictive substances and behaviors is because they're addictive.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sort of takes the pressure off of figuring out the why, the existential why.
Yeah, I think there's always an existential why. And it's not that we shouldn't spend time there, but what I encounter a lot clinically is people saying, well, if I just figured out why I was addicted or why I did this behavior, I would stop. And the truth is that's not how it works.
What about boredom? Boredom seems to be something that comes up a lot. These are the reasons why we pick up our phones and go to Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok or whatever it is, and people feel like without it, they are bored. And of course, this goes back to sort of that homeostasis, right? That baseline, I think, seems to be sort of out of whack if we find that we're always bored. And that's why we're picking up our phones.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. First of all, when we're in the clinic, when we're working with patients with severe addiction to drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, what have you, one of the biggest complaints about not using, especially in the early days, is boredom. People find themselves suddenly with enormous amounts of time because addiction takes a lot of time and energy, and a lot of boredom, because boredom is a kind of distress, right? It's a kind of psychological distress. You're bored, not entertained, not distracted, but it also can open up like existential questions like, oh, gee, what am I doing with my life anyway? Right. So boredom is quite a painful emotion. And it's important to acknowledge that. And it's very common in the early days of withdrawal. When it comes to the digital media problem, we're going to naturally expect boredom as part of the withdrawal process as our brains try to recalibrate.
Yeah.
And the longer people can go without using their digital drug of choice, the more interesting or salient other things will become. And this is such a key thing, right? So the addictive behaviors actually drive the boredom. And the longer we can stay away from our addictive substance or behavior, the more interesting, like even an ordinary object will be to us. But we have to trust that will come with time. People are so impatient. I don't feel better yet, or this is really boring, or this is really stupid. Just stay with it. The first 10 to 14 days are horrible, but if you can get to week 3 or 4, you might experience that a hobby that you used to have, that you kind of let go by the wayside, is suddenly appealing and interesting again.
The simple things. You'll be able to enjoy the simple things again. Doesn't that sound amazing? So, okay, let's say you've completed 30 days of your dopamine fast. Now what? Now you experiment with the idea of moderation. But be cautious. Remember when Anna said after 4 weeks of no romance novels, she was good to go? Well, that wasn't quite the case.
I read another romance novel, binged all weekend long, something we called the abstinence violation effect, and then realized, oh, okay, I actually can't, something's changed in my brain. I cannot moderate my consumption. So I essentially permanently gave up the genre and have been very happy ever since. No, it's not that easy. But now I struggle with YouTube and who knows what else. But You get the idea.
Yeah. And the moderating consumption is a constant experimentation, it sounds like.
It's a constant battle, isn't it?
Yeah. Would you say like another step there when it comes to this is like, hey, I'm going to talk to a friend and be like, hi, I think that I'm on my phone too much.
Yes. We are very sensitive to how people around us are consuming substances and behaviors, and we tend to mimic them. So in order to change that behavior, if we do it together with others, we're much more likely to be successful. The converse is also true. If we continue to socialize with folks who are consuming substances and behaviors in ways that we don't like or we want to change, it's going to be really hard to do that.
Right.
So yeah, co-regulating with other people, it's a great form of self-binding.
It's like the accountability buddy.
Yeah. And also, then you're both off your phones together. And it's like, well, let's have a conversation. And again, all of a sudden that person becomes much more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And neither of you is sort of waiting for the other one to go online. And like, let me just say, this is an ongoing struggle. I have this struggle too. At the end of a long day, I also just really want to veg out and watch YouTube. And, there's my husband and he's, vegging out, playing chess or whatever it is, online chess. But it's much better when instead of doing that, we kind of come together, we listen to each other, talk about our days, plan our next day.
Yep.
So yeah, and I just really encourage people to experiment with their consumptive behaviors and see what works for them, but not to give up on the project too soon and to embrace the project of dopamine fasting or an abstinence trial as something that might really enhance their lives.
Recap. Time is our most valuable commodity. So let's stop spending so much of it by mindlessly picking up our phones and scrolling the internet. Anna says one way to do this is to conduct a 4-week abstinence trial. No, this doesn't mean you'll turn off your phone for a month, but it does mean you will drastically reduce the amount of time you spend on it. Approach this as though it's an experiment. You are a scientist and your life is a lab or something. So think about how you want to spend your time and how your phone may be taking you away from doing those things. Next, come up with some ideas for what you're going to do instead of scrolling on your phone, because you will need backup. Maybe this means taking a trip to the library to get some good books, or revisiting that embroidery project you abandoned a couple years ago. I bought myself a hefty crossword puzzle book. Yuli's Gold for Days. That's it for our second class. Up next in our third class, we're going to give you the tools you need to successfully reset your relationship with your phone, tablet, whatever your dopamine conduit is. We'll hear from Washington Post tech columnist Jeff Fowler. He's tried it all and knows what works and what doesn't. If you're listening to this as it's newly published, the next classes will be available on Tuesdays, April 1st and April 8th. But you can access them both right now and ad-free with a subscription to the Post. If you already have one, great. Find the Washington Post channel in Apple Podcasts and connect your subscription there. If you don't yet have one, you can subscribe to the Washington Post through the link in our show notes. All right, meet me in class 3.